Hey everyone, welcome to Two Car Pros. My name is Ryan and today I'm going to be showing you how to service the transmission on a 6-speed 2014 Dodge Ram 1500. This is for the 6-speed, not the 8-speed, and I do show how to do both filters, as there are two. With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump in. So here we are underneath our Ram, and what I'm going to do is remove all of our bolts that aren't in the four corners. So I want to leave one bolt in each of the four corners of the transmission pan. That way I can remove it in a measured fashion. These are 8mm bolts. Maybe just remove these bad boys. Alright, no special tools needed so far. And before you even start removing bolts, make sure everything's cool to the touch. You don't want, a really hot exhaust or even a hot transmission pan. Just wait till it's nice and cool. You don't want to burn yourself. And where's my protection? Because transmission fluid's going to get everywhere. No matter what you do, you're going to make a big mess, so get ready for it. Speaking of getting ready for it, I have my very large, shallow pan ready to catch the downpour here because, to my knowledge, the only manufacturer that still makes pans with bolts, drain bolts on them, I think is Toyota. I think. Don't quote me on that, but the last Toyota I worked on had them, and it was pleasant. So what we want to do is loosen, but don't remove the last two bolts we have in the rear. Just loosen them a little bit. And then what we're going to do is remove completely the front two. And make sure you're ready, because sometimes when you remove this last one, it can just dump on you. I don't think that's going to be the case here, because it looks like it's RTV to the transmission. So when you're at this stage, it might take a little bit of convincing, a little bit of prying to get the transmission pan to dump from the front. This is when it helps to have a helper or something. They can hold up the pan while you're prying. And just be ginger with it. You don't want to bend anything irreversibly. Oh, it's starting to come. All right, get ready. Like that. There we go. See, I told you, no matter what you do, you're gonna make a mess. That's just the nature of the beast on this job. And that's why you have the last two in the back still bolted in, so that way the pan doesn't just fall on top of you and make an even bigger mess. And that's why I say always to wear eye protection when you're doing this job, because transmission fluid in your eye burns. Ask me how I know. So, at this stage, you can just let it drip for a little while. What we're gonna do is remove the last two bolts carefully and gingerly let the pan down, and again, it's gonna make a big mess, so be ready for it. Remove our pan. It's gonna wanna come down even more. There we go. That looks pretty good, isn't too bad. You can just shimmy the pan forward. All right. Dump the rest out in our catch basin. There we go. And just let the transmission drip for a while. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna clean our pan, and we wanna make sure this is as clean as possible. Really get in there and clean it. And here's a big tip. This is a magnet over here on the pan, and you can see on the end of my finger a little bit of what looks like lubricant, but it isn't. This is actually very fine metal powder that comes from just the transmission's normal use. So why is that important? It's important because you need to clean it off completely, and it can be a little bit of a bear. See, look at all that. You want to clean it off completely. That way, new metal that's floating around in the transmission has a chance to form on this magnet. It's really important to get this just as clean as you can. That's pretty good. I'm gonna set that aside for right this moment, and then I'm gonna clean the rest of the pan with some carburetor spray and elbow grease. There we go. The inside of our pan looks pretty clean. Look how gross our towel is. Yuck! So it's good that that is no longer in our pan. It's nice and clean, but we have to worry about this, which is RTV leftover from the factory. So the factory only put this pan on using RTV. Usually there's a gasket, but you know what? Just RTV does in fact work. as evidenced by this transmission having about 100,000 miles on it and not leaking a drop. So what you're going to want to use here is a nice scraper. Hold the pan down and gently scrape the old RTV off. Now, don't go hog wild. Don't like dig into the metal or anything. You just want the old RTV off of there. That's all you're doing, all right? So this is gonna take a while. Go around, take your time, and make sure you get all of the old RTV off of there. So our pan is nice and clean. You wanna make sure down in these like little channels here that all the RTV is out of there. I did actually use my die grinder on this. I call it a gasket gun. Some people call it a die grinder. To really get down in there and clean all that off, it should look like this, nice and bare metal. There's a couple of teeny spots left, but I can't get that out, so we're gonna run with it. And then our nice and clean magnet, we're just gonna put right where we found it, right there. And then we're going to give the mating surface a nice cleaning with RTV to make sure there's no dust or oil or anything of the sort for when we lay down our RTV. There we go, nice and clean. So now we can remove our filters. Yes, ters with an S. And here are the filters. One's right here and the other's right here. This is your cooler filter, this is your primary filter, and your primary filter is only held in with one T25 Torx, but if you try to put it there, look, there's not enough room to get a ratchet. So what do you do? So what I'm gonna do is take my Torx, put it up on the fastener, and then I'm gonna get a 1/4 inch wrench to kind of grip the base of it. Oh yeah, that worked perfectly. Now it's only held in with this one T25, so put it somewhere special so you don't lose it, and then what we can do is just remove our primary filter. I'm just gonna pull that straight like that, and it might leak a bit on you, that's all right. Dump that primary filter out, we're done with it. So to remove this cooler filter, I have a 901 sized socket for oil filters. I think it's gonna work well. Alternatively, you could just use a big pair of channel locks. Once you get it loose, you can probably get it off by hand. Just like an oil filter, the second you break it loose, it is going to dribble everywhere. And the rest of the way. There we go. And when you remove it, just like an oil filter, make sure that the O-ring, or the gasket right here, comes along with it, which this one has, so that's perfect. So the next thing we're going to focus on is our primary filter seal right here. Now, some people will say you don't have to remove this if it's in good shape, and they're right, you don't. But I'm going to assume that yours isn't in good shape, so what we can do is grab a hook tool. There we go. So it worked pretty good for me, and you gotta be really careful about this because the transmission's made of aluminum, is just grab a chisel and just kind of tap it until it deforms a little bit, and then it just plops right out. That's probably the easiest way to do that. So when you're all done, that seal is gone. And we can see right there that there is no gasket remaining for the cooler filter. So what we can do now is just, you know, wipe down the valve body a little bit, clean up the surface where the cooler filter is going to meet the transmission, and then imperatively, what is just stupid important, is the mating surface around where the pan is going to interface with the transmission. That has to be stupid clean. So, you know, go through there maybe with like the backside of a sponge and make it really, really clean. Luckily, there's not a lot of RTV on this side, which is nice, so we can go ahead and do that. Alrighty, time to replace our filters. So I got this one from our local Napa, and it came with a quart gasket. You could definitely use a quart gasket. The reason I don't like using these is it's really easy to split these, and then you have to do the job again. What I'm gonna do is just use RTV just like the factory did. seemed to work for 100,000 miles on this truck. There's no reason to think it wouldn't work again. It does come with a new seal for the primary filter. Here's our primary filter, and then our cooler filter is actually made by Wix. That is the OEM on this, and link down below in the description for both of these. We can take that out. We're gonna put our cooler filter in first because it's still dripping and I want that to stop. What we do is remove the protective plastic. Very cool. And I'm going to fill it with our ATF. It is ATF +4, and we have the Napa brand here, but it's actually made by Valvoline. It even says so on the back, which is interesting. And we are going to pre-fill our filter, and we're going to apply some ATF to our finger and rub it around the seal there. And we just want this, you know, full, 3/4 full. It doesn't have to be, you know, right up to the bleeding edge. You just want some in there. And then we're going to apply some of the ATF around our finger like this. There we go, looks pretty good. Could use a little more down in there. Make sure this seal is nice and lubricated. Our filter is pre-filled. Now we can go back over to the truck. So now we can install our cooler filter, and our torque spec is 84 inch-pounds. Make sure you're not cross-threading. One hand tight seems right, but again, if you need that torque spec, it is 84 inch-pounds. So up where our transmission filter interfaces with our transmission, we're just gonna make sure that's nice and clean up there. Looks good. Then we can grab our seal, place it up in there, making sure you just get it just right. Making sure it's in like this. Place that on top of an 18mm socket we're going to use as a die to send it home. Once we get nice and lined up, just tap her in. You want to do that as square as possible. There we go, nice and installed. You can tell when the surfaces look exactly like they did before we removed it, which this one does. Very cool. And what I'm gonna do is take some fresh ATF on the end of my finger and just apply it to the inside of the seal. So that way the O-ring isn't dry when we are trying to put the filter on. There we go, looks pretty good. All right, with our new transmission filter, I've already lubricated with ATF on the end where it interfaces with the transmission. We can install that gingerly. This is the correct one. There we go. That's all right. Cool. And then we can hold that up while we put in our T25 Torx bolt. And I can hold on to that there, make sure this is nice and seated, which it is. And then we can reinstall our screw. We can tighten that bad boy up. Now, the torque spec is 40 inch-pounds, so not very tight at all. I obviously can't get a torque wrench on this, so I'm just gonna feel it out. Should be pretty obvious. There we go, that feels pretty good. So just like from factory, we're just gonna lay down some RTV. Give it a medium bead, and then when you go around the bolt hole, go on the inside. It's kind of nice. They left you this channel, shows you exactly where to put your RTV. You don't want a whole ton, you just want enough, because you don't want it squishing into the pan either. But if you put too little, it won't do its job, and you'll have a leak. Kind of cool thing about just using RTV though, you kind of have infinite tries at it because you don't have to replace it with a gasket. And don't be afraid to clean up any parts of the RTV you don't like. It takes a little bit of time for this stuff to set, but you kind of want to work quickly at the same time. This might look like a lot on camera, but it will squish out into the perfect amount. You can use less. I wouldn't use any more though. And again, if it looks like too much, you can wipe it off. Or if it's not enough, go ahead and add some more. Before we put our pan on, just go ahead and give this another wipe down, because when we're installing the filter, ATF could have gotten on this surface, and if it does, like it has at the rear here, you might not be able to see it, our RTV will not adhere to the surface, and we are in Leak City, and we are just doing the job all over again. All right, that looks pretty clean there. We can install it how it went. You want to get it basically like this, and then just go straight up with it, and don't moosh it around too much. Sweet. Okay, looking good. And notice I'm not actually tightening these down, I'm just installing them, because the way you tighten it down is actually kind of important. That's why I have my handy dandy screw jack stand here. Alternatively, you could use a person. All right, so now you're looking directly up at the transmission pan, and this is kind of important because you kind of need to go in a sequence. And our torque spec for today is 105 inch-pounds. Because we're using RTV, it would be 80 if you're using a gasket. There we go. So then we cross over to the other side. And then next door to it, because we're just basically doing a big spiral. So just draw a big spiral with your imagination. And I like to go clockwise. So we started here, and we're going like this. I guess it's counterclockwise. Go 5, and then we go across the pan to this one. Very cool. Doom, 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 doom. And then we're gonna do this guy. And you can go clockwise or counterclockwise, doesn't really matter. This is just gonna set the pan down evenly. There we go. So we went like this, and then we're gonna do that guy over there. It's kind of a pain, but gotta do what you gotta do. There we go, and then we can go across the pan again. There we go. Here. Good. And this one. Cool. We can do this one. Cool. And this one. I know this seems unnecessary, but it's essential for making sure the pan sits down as evenly as possible. Because if you tighten one side down and then the other side isn't going quite right, and then you have a leak, and then you're doing the job again. Alright, pretty good. This one right here. Your last one. And there we go. All the bolts torqued down. You can go ahead and check them again if you like. Probably a good idea. So now we can clean off our Y pipe with some carburetor spray, because transmission fluid burns and smokes up, and you don't want to think that your truck's on fire just because there's a little bit of leftover ATF on the Y pipe. Now, on the silicone rubber on the transmission seal, don't try to like wipe it or like correct it. Just leave it how it is. Don't try to like smooth out and make it look nice. Leave it how it is. Ideally overnight. I'm gonna wait at least 3 hours though. Let the stuff really solidify. Alrighty, so it's more like 24 hours later. Always look on your tube of RTV to see what the cure time is. Ours was 24 hours. I went ahead and waited the full 24 just because the only thing holding back fluid from leaking is the RTV. You can go ahead and touch it and look. It's nice and hard, which means it's gonna make a nice seal for us. On my workspace, I even have my tester. Remember, I kind of squeezed some out as a test. Look at it. It's nice and vulcanized. So under the hood here, this is our transmission dipstick. We can go ahead and just remove that bad boy and set it aside. And then we're gonna need to grab a transmission funnel and put it in the dipstick tube, just like that. And then I'm gonna grab our ATF. Again, it is this ATF +4 stuff, linked down below in the description, and we can start adding it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put in 4 quarts, and then we're gonna start the truck and see where the level is. All right, so we're gonna remove our funnel, and then we're gonna start the vehicle and see where our level is at. All right, so let's check the level. And you can see right there that it looks like it's about a quart low. It's right at the end of my thumb, just there. So it needs to be, you know, closer to where this dot is. All right, so we're at least a quart low. Go ahead and add another one. So this is quart number 5. You can see it's still a bit low. It looks like it's about here, so we're going to put in another quart. All right, we're getting a little more full. So I'm going to go ahead and start adding transmission fluid at about half quart at a time, because it is really difficult to take out transmission fluid. It's really easy to add. All right, there you go. We're at 5.5 quarts added. All right, now the fluid is a bit more where I want it. We're gonna go ahead and have a helper stand on the brakes and run through the gears. So he's gonna go down to like reverse drive, first, second, and back up a couple of times. Make sure you have that helper have his foot on the brake hard, and heck, even set the parking brake. We're gonna check that fluid level again. See, it's dropped. It's like right down here. All right, need more. That is quart number 6 in. And we can see right there, the level is right where my thumb is, just below the hot dot, so it is perfect because the transmission's not hot yet. It's kind of like medium warm. It's been running a little bit. That's exactly where I want it to be. And you can go ahead and check the level over the next couple of days and keep your eye on it, make sure that the transmission isn't running dry. And then at this stage, look underneath it, make sure it's not leaking. After it's been running a bit, look at the seal. Is it leaking? Look all around it. How does it look? Especially look at the back. The back's really important. Look, bone dry. This is what you want to see. Nice and sealed. No drips, no drops, no puddles. Bone dry. Perfect. That is how to service your transmission for a 2014 Ram 1500. It is a little bit of a task, especially when you're dealing with that much RTV. And there's 2 filters, which I think is a little excessive, but hey, that's the way they're doing things now. And now you know how to do it as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.